Welcome to the Newsome MMA podcast, partnered with Heavy Duty Fight Management. I'm your host as always, Newsome, with your co-host John, and tonight we're back after the 1 week break to break down UFC on ESPN Plus 11 from Stockholm, Sweden. John, how are you doing tonight, man?
Hey there, man. I'm very well, thank you. We've recharged our batteries after that week off. We're rejuvenated and we're looking forward to the UFC being back, man. And it's back on European soil. What more could we ask for?
Absolutely, and I think the card's going to be a lot of fun too. We've got 3 huge light heavyweight fights in the final 3 fights of the card, so I think that'll hold some significance moving forward in the division too. So it's Definitely exciting for sure. But before we start, as always, thank you to all the listeners, followers and subscribers to this podcast. We've got plenty of platforms where you can catch this show across YouTube, iTunes, Spotify and SoundCloud. So please subscribe to make sure that you never miss an episode. And with that said, let's break down some fights at UFC Stockholm and we enter the Showtime Fights. The first Showtime fight tonight is Volkan Oezdemir versus Ilir Latifi. John, who have you got?
Yeah, man. How could we not look at this fight for one of the Showtime fights? It's a battle of big light heavyweights, big heavy hitters. No time against a sledgehammer. I mean, with 2 nicknames like that, you know that you're in for violence, and that's certainly what we're hoping for. I mean, this fight for me, it's actually a very close fight because obviously we know Oezdemir is coming into this fight off the back of not 1, not 2, but 3 losses in a row. Most recently, that split decision to Dominic Reyes, which a lot of people thought that he may have edged that fight. I mean, it was extremely close. Reyes, we know, he's a very good up-and-comer in the division, very dangerous guy himself, and that was a close fight. And Oezdemir fought a clever fight in that fight, I thought, especially given the fact that the previous fight against Anthony Smith, he gassed real quickly and looked pretty poor outside of the first round and a half in that fight, and then obviously prior to that was the loss to Daniel Cormier. And I mean, for me, it's still quite hard to judge Volkan Oezdemir. I know he's now had I think 6 fights in the UFC, but it's so difficult to gauge where he is, given the fact that he won his first 3 fights. Obviously, his Oezdemir Proof fight was his debut fight, so I try not to take too much from debut fights because some fighters overachieve, some fighters underachieve. We spoke before about coming into it under the bright lights, all that kind of stuff. So you never really know what you're getting with a fighter on their debut performance. Sometimes they storm out the blocks and knock someone out in a matter of minutes, but then their next fight they don't look quite as good, so it's quite hard to gauge. And then we had those 2 fights against Misha Serkinov and Jimi Manuwa where he put those guys away in like a matter of no time. Within, I think both guys were knocked out in the first round within a combined total of about 50 seconds. So everyone then is the hype is real about this guy. He knocks guys out, especially two veteran guys in Serkinov and Jimi Manuwa, and then he faces Cormier, he loses, but everyone's like, okay, Cormier's one of the greatest of all time. But then the Anthony Smith fight I watched, and I wasn't overly impressed with him at all. I mean, I know Smith is on a resurgence at light heavyweight, but I still think there are a lot of holes in Smith's game. We saw that against John Jones, and we'll talk more in detail about that when we get to his fight later on in the card. And yeah, so it's kind of hard to gauge. And then we had that Reyes fight, like I say, that was really close, really tight, and could really have gone either way. And it was a bit of a coin toss for who won it. So for me, it's still kind of hard to gauge what kind of Volkan Oezdemir is going to come out and perform on the night. And we know he's got power. We know he's got heavy hands. He can knock guys out, but can he only do that early? If he doesn't knock them out within the first minute or two, does he lose that power? Yes, his power does look like it seems to fade. But then he's going up against the guy in Ilir Latifi who is very similar because although he's more predominantly a wrestler, he's a very good wrestler. He's known for fading and fading badly as well in fights as well. His gas tank has always been pretty questionable, and it's not surprising when you look at him. He's just one big wedge of muscle. Again, he's a guy that can finish fights. He's got power in his hands. Looking back on his record, I know we're going back a few years, but Hans Stringer and Sean O'Connell beat both of them within a minute of the first round. And he's got wins over Gian Vellante, Tyson Pedro, both again via decision. Usually comes out the blocks pretty fast, wins first couple of rounds, does slow down, but edges them. Then obviously over to St. Preux, he got that nasty guillotine in the first round, but then he looks pretty ordinary against guys. These are top level guys as well, might I add, in Jan Blachowicz, Ryan Bader, Corey Anderson. Obviously, Bader and Anderson we know are predominantly wrestlers themselves. So when he struggles to impact himself with his wrestling and he's getting taken down and getting worked a bit and worn on, he tends to tire and fade and lose those fights. So it's going to be really interesting. I mean, I think Latifi will try and take this to the mat. I think he'd be silly not to. I do think on the feet Oezdemir is the better fighter. He does tend to Latifi tends to just kind of wing 1 and 2 shots, throw them big bombs. Not surprising when you see the size of him and you know he's got that knockout power. Obviously, Oezdemir has got a big height and reach advantage as well, so he can utilise that from the outside. So I would expect Latifi to try and get this fight to the mat, but Oezdemir hasn't got bad takedown defence. I mean, when he does start to tire, he obviously he gets taken down a lot easier. But I mean, against Cormier, yes, he got taken down, but that's Daniel Cormier, and he's one of the best wrestlers in the UFC, full stop. So that's kind of understandable. So it's going to be really interesting to see how those early clinch and wrestling exchanges play out. I mean, Latifi can get the fight to the mat. I think that he can spend some time on top and do what he does, grind out the first couple of rounds and get a decision. If he doesn't finish the fight, of course, in that time. But I think if he struggles to get the fight to the mat early and he realises that he's not going to be able to take this down and he's not going to be able to utilise his wrestling, I think this is going to be a long night for Ilir Latifi, and I think Oezdemir will utilise that smart game plan that we saw against Dominic Reyes. I know he was a little cautious at times, but you can't just go in all guns blazing in this light heavyweight division, because guys will be able to knock you out. So, but for me, I'm going with Volkan Oezdemir in this one. I think he's going to break the run of defeats and notch up his first win. I think that he will be able to avoid the takedowns enough. I mean, just looking at his statistics, I think his takedown defense in the UFC so far 75%. Got a good record against takedown. He has, like I say, has got that height and reach. So if you can keep Latifi at range, if he could circle off the fence so Latifi can't initiate the clinch up against the fence, then I think Oezdemir will be able to keep it upright long enough to win some of the rounds. I don't think anyone's going to get finished in this fight. Latifi's pretty tough. Ozdemir's pretty tough. Oezdemir obviously got finished against Smith in round 3 when he was exhausted, but I don't think Latifi has. Smith was exhausted in that fight as well, so maybe Latifi could finish him if he's exhausted as well. But I just don't think it's going to happen. I just can't see it in this fight. I think it's going to go to a decision, and I'm taking Volkan Oezdemir to win this fight. I think it's going to be close, but I think he will be the better of the two in the striking exchanges, and I think that is where it's going to go to pay dividends in this fight. So I'm going with Volkan Oezdemir to win this fight via decision.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion on Volkan Oezdemir, it's been a bit of a whirlwind, a bit of a roller coaster so far in the UFC because he came in on short notice against Ovin St. Preux, OSP, looked horrible, and then he goes out there against Misha Serkinov and knocks him out. We're like, what the fuck? Like, go back and if you still haven't, I don't know how many times I have to say this when I'm breaking Oezdemir fights down, but if you still haven't seen that fight, go back and watch it. You'll think, what the fuck as well. And then Jimi Manuwa, again, you're sort of thinking, what the fuck? That was another weird knockout. So at this point, with 3 fights into his UFC career, we still don't know a whole lot about him. Then he gets a title shot against the then champion Daniel Cormier, right? So he goes in against Daniel Cormier. The fight ends or goes down or both exactly how most people thought it would. There's levels to this sport. Daniel Cormier was just levels above Volkan Oezdemir. Yeah. Took him down eventually, and got the job done within 2 rounds. And then you're still thinking, well, that's Daniel Cormier, and he'll do that to most fighters that he fights that's not named John Jones. So you're then still left with what's Volkan Oezdemir about. Then he goes in against Anthony Smith, right? So he goes in against Smith, and he has a decent first round. Second round, a little sketchy, but it's okay. And then the third round, Smith starts to take over. He gets a takedown. He gets the back, and he chokes him out. Now at that point, you're then thinking, right? Well, we know enough about Oezdemir right now. He's got sort of 7.5 minute gas tank. He has got decent power as long as he can connect. But then he will fade, and you're thinking his takedown defense may be a little suspect, and his defensive grappling may be a little suspect as well. But then he goes out against Dominic Reyes, and this was really the eye opener for me, because Dominic Reyes was a highly touted prospect in the light heavyweight division. He still is, in my opinion. He didn't perform, I don't think, to his best of his abilities against Oezdemir in that fight. He's an athlete. Athletes have off days. It's not just MMA. It's every other sport: football, rugby, boxing, tennis, whatever it is. All athletes have an off day, and I just believe that was a little off day for Reyes. But actually, after watching the fight back a couple more times, I don't think it's so much Reyes having an off night. I just think Volkan Oezdemir was he looked a lot better, a lot more improved, a lot more technical. He managed his cardio much better as well. And then if you listen to the commentary on that fight, they were talking about how Volkan Oezdemir got a couple of things fixed. He got his nose fixed, because he was having trouble breathing, which obviously, you need your nose to breathe in life, but especially when you're inside the cage fighting. And then he also had his right hand fixed as well, and apparently both the nose and the right hand were causing him a number of issues for a number of years, and he finally got them both fixed before that fight with Reyes. And it actually shows, I don't normally buy into this sort of stuff, but he, like I said, his cardio was a lot better. He managed it a lot better. That to me is a sign that his nose could probably have been fixed, Then you look at his striking, it was more fluid. He was mixing takedowns with his strikes as well. That could be a result of his hand being fixed. So at the minute, I'm going from his last fight against one of the best guys in the division. And if you're absolutely pushing me for a decision on that fight, I would have edged it to Reyes. I know a lot of people disagree, and I would not have this debate with anybody that disagreed with me, because the fight was just that close. But that's the point. The fight was that close, and Reyes is one of the best in the division, and will be for a long period of time, in my opinion. So Volkan Ozdemir's last fight was very impressive, and he seemed to have fixed a lot of holes in his game, like I say, in regards to his cardio and overexerting himself early on. But then you look at Ilir Latifi. Now Latifi's a fighter that I've always liked as well. Now, you look at his last 5 fights in the UFC, so all the way back in 2016, Jean Vellante took a decision against him. We can look back now, and no disrespect to Vellante, he's probably not that impressive with the way Vellante's now sort of hit his decline. Then he lost to Ryan Bader. That happens. Ryan Bader is still, it was a good fighter then, is still a good fighter now. Tyson Pedro, at the time, we were thinking, holy shit, a lot of people were high on Pedro at that time, but now we know that Pedro has underperformed and not turned out as we expected, at least up until now. The kid's still young, he can still improve. OSP's declining. And to be honest with you, in that fight, OSP had a similar sort of height and reach advantage to what Oezdemir is going to have, and Latifi was actually struggling with that range in that fight. Volkan Oezdemir is by far a more technical striker than OSP is, so I do feel that that fight could be a little reflection of what we're going to see in this fight, on Saturday night. Then we look at Corey Anderson, and Corey Anderson is on a little bit of a resurgence himself, admittedly, but he couldn't get Corey Anderson down. Yes, he's a D3 wrestler, but he still had him in clinch positions, and you got to give it to Ilir Latifi. He's a freakishly strong athlete, and he'll pick anybody up. And he did try to pick Corey Anderson up. He did try to put him down. He couldn't, but then he faded because of it. And then Corey Anderson put a striking clinic on him. He kept him where he wanted him at range, managed his pace well, managed the range perfectly, was landing jabs, was moving in and out at the right times. He was moving out with his chin out a little too much. So that was something that Ilir Latifi didn't really take advantage of. But the fact is, again, Volkan Oezdemir, in my opinion, is a better striker than Corey Anderson. And I think in this fight, it's the style definitely favours Volkan Oezdemir. And especially, like I've already mentioned, from what I saw of Volkan Oezdemir in his last fight against Dominic Reyes, I absolutely think that the biggest difference in this fight stylistically is the striking of Volkan Oezdemir. Yes, Latifi could close the distance, get a hold of him, pick him up and put him down, but this is another thing as well. It's become an opinion of many that Volkan Oezdemir doesn't have good takedown defense, but like you mentioned, John, 75% takedown defense in the UFC. He does all the right things when he's pressed against the cage. He gets his base wide, he gets his underhooks in, he's patient, he doesn't rush, he doesn't panic, he doesn't try to overexert his strength and energy to throw his fighter throw his opponent off him in the defending the takedown. He just does everything fundamentally sound. And even against DC, he defended 1 or 2 takedowns as well. And that's a guy that, I don't even need to talk about DC's wrestling. He defended a couple of takedowns from DC. His takedown defense actually isn't that bad. And the thing is with Oezdemir, one of his biggest strengths is his attack inside the clinch. It's really dangerous going in the clinch with Oezdemir because he's got real short power. Talk to Misha Serkinov, talk to Jimi Manuwa. They'll both attest to that. He's got elbows inside the clinch. He's really dangerous in the clinch. Ilir Latifi doesn't shoot singles and doubles. He essentially just closes the distance, gets a hold of his opponent, pushes him against the cage and gets in the clinch. That's a dangerous place for Latifi to be. And that's the place where Latifi needs to be if he's going to score the takedowns. So like I say, I think it's just a bad stylistic matchup for Latifi because he's going to have trouble with the range, I think. Volkan Oezdemir is going to be piecing him up from the outside. As far as the last fights go, I definitely think Oezdemir's got the better cardio. Latifi's going to likely fade late. And if Latifi does close the distance, he's going to have to work to close the distance. Then he's going to put himself in danger inside the clinch from Oezdemir's attack. And then if he tries to take Oezdemir down, Oezdemir isn't going to go down easily. So Latifi's going to have to work really hard to get the takedowns. If he does get a takedown on Oezdemir, which I could see him getting 1 or 2 potentially, and he puts him down, I think Oezdemir can stand right back up. That's going to exert energy off both fighters, to be fair, but more Latifi than Oezdemir. And like I say, the longer this fight goes, the more Oezdemir is going to come into it. Not that I don't think he's going to be in it from the first bell anyway, but I like Volkan Oezdemir in this fight. I could potentially see a decision, so I don't necessarily disagree with your method of victory there, John. But I think if Latifi tires the way he did against Corey Anderson, I think Oezdemir is going to knock him out because Oezdemir is just a more lethal striker. So for that reason, I'm going to take Volkan Oezdemir to win, and I'm going to take him to win via knockout. Now, in the second Showtime fight of the podcast, we've got Damir Hadzovic against Christos Giagos. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is an interesting matchup, and one that I'm actually very much looking forward to seeing and seeing how the guys approach this fight, because for me, Hadzovic he's a good striker. He's a dangerous guy on the feet. I mean, we've seen so far in his UFC tenure, he beat Marcin Held with that big knee in round 3 of their fight. Nick Hine, who he fought quite recently in July last year, he won a split decision. That was quite a close fight, but Hadzovic's striking was crisp in that. I mean, I like his jab. He's got a really nice jab that he uses to good effect. And once he starts putting combinations together and not just throwing 1 or 2 strikes, he can look a really dangerous guy. And then most recently he fought Polo Reyes, and I picked Polo Reyes to win that fight. And Hadzovic really, really impressed me in that fight. I mean, he utilised a bit of a different game plan, taking Reyes down a couple of times, which I don't think Reyes was expecting. I think he was just expecting the two of them to stand there and slug it out, and he didn't get that. Hadzovic took him down and worked on the ground, and Hadzovic looked really good in that fight. And when you look back at the guys he's lost against, not just in the UFC, but in his career to date. 3 of his 4 losses have come against Alan Patrick, Mairbek Taisumov, and Christoph Jotko way back in 2012 as well in another promotion. So I mean, these aren't just poor level or entry level UFC fighters that he's losing against. I mean, Patrick and Taisumov are 2 very dangerous guys. So it's going to be interesting to see how this fight plays out, because Christos Giagos, we mentioned before, he's back for his second stint in the UFC. He looked very good in his return fight against Charles Oliveira. Had a very good first round, but then Oliveira took over. No shame in that. Oliveira is a very dangerous guy. His most recent fight, he fought Mizuto Hirota, and he won a decision. That fight, he was pretty wild in round 1, just coming out swinging, throwing bombs, and he dropped Hirota a couple of times, if I remember correctly. But Hirota managed to regain his senses, and then Giagos just took him down and did dangerous work on the ground. And it's going to be interesting, because I think this fight comes down to game plans. If Giagos comes out with, as we know, Americans, typically good wrestlers. We've seen many times before American wrestlers come out and restless European guys, unfortunately, and we don't have an answer to it, and we just see like a 3-round smothering, and Hadzovic hasn't got great takedown defense as well. I think he gave up 9 takedowns to Patrick, if I remember rightly. He gave 4 takedowns against Marcin Held as well. Now Held he's a good wrestler and a very dangerous grappler. But yeah, he gave up 4 takedowns against Held. So Nick Hein didn't attempt any takedowns that I recall. So obviously let him off the hook there. So if Giagos comes out and decides, yeah, I'm going to play this sensibly, I'm going to try and take Hadzovic down. Hadzovic is dangerous striking. Then I think it's going to be a long night for Hadzovic, and I think that Giagos will win this fight quite comfortably. But if he comes out with a mindset of throwing down and trying to exchange, even just for the first round, I mean, for me, Hadzovic is the better striker, as I mentioned. When he's got a really nice jab, and as soon as he starts putting combinations together, he looks very dangerous on the feet. I mean, he, like I said, against Nick Hein, he wasn't doing that, and although he was really snapping the jab and he busted up Hein's face, he didn't put anything behind that jab. He didn't mix in the 2 or anything. He's just literally just throwing the jab. But one thing to note with Hadzovic is he has a very high guard, and we saw that against Hein. Hein several times just not really full power jabs, just touch 2 or 3 jabs, and Hadzovic's hands are really high. Now Giagos comes out and decides on the wrestling game plan. If he just utilises a jab, and then when the guard's high, shoots and level changes for the takedown, I think he is going to be able to take Hadzovic down. I mentioned before about his takedown defense. I think if you look at his actual statistics for his takedown defense, it's 31%. So I mean, he gets taken down a lot, and I know Patrick and Held are 2 very good guys when it comes to wrestling, but I do worry if Giagos comes out wrestling this fight. And I've actually had a change of heart in this matchup. I originally was picking Hadzovic to win this fight. I thought he'd be able to box Giagos up and do some damage on the feet, utilise that nice jab, keep his distance, and yeah, pick Giagos apart and either finish him with the strikes or go on to win a decision. But I have actually changed my mind, and after watching some tapes and footage and just picking up on a few things like that high guard and looking back on the fights against Patrick and Held, I mean, obviously he caught Held with a knee as Held went in for a takedown, which can happen, but I think Giagos will take him down. I think he'll use a similar game plan to the one he did against Hirota, and I think he's going to be able to wrestle him for 3 rounds and grind out a decision. So for this one, I'm going with Christos Giagos to win the fight via decision.
Yeah, man. I mean, first and foremost, the line the betting line for this fight from start to where we are right now has been ridiculous in my opinion. At one point, I think Giagos was like plus 196, so nearly a 2-1 underdog. It's crazy. It's come down a lot now. You're sort of looking at like the plus 140, plus 150 range, which I still feel is a little bit off. I think the fight should be much closer to a pick'em. You know, there's a lot of hype around Damir Hadzovic at the minute, and you know I can see the reason why, because a lot of people, again you said John and myself included, picked Polo Reyes in that fight, and Hadzovic came out and absolutely smoked him, man, on the feet, and then took him down, and then had some nice ground and pound, some nice transitions on the mat, passing from guard to half guard, and like I say, just making Polo Reyes turtle up. But prior to that Polo Reyes fight, he wasn't looking massively impressive. Taisumov knocked him out, you know, fair enough. Taisumov's a monster. And then Marcin Held was beating him quite comfortably in that fight until that weird knee. Well, it wasn't a weird knee, it was well timed, but you know, it was a fight that Hadzovic was losing very comfortably. And then he goes against Alan Patrick, and Alan Patrick did to Hadzovic what he's been doing to many other fighters throughout his career, you know, completely dominated him. And at this point, you're thinking, well, actually, his only off fight at this point was maybe Marcin Held, the fight that he won. And then he goes in against Nick Hein, and, you know, I was there for that fight in Hamburg, and it was a very underwhelming performance. I don't think it should have been a split decision. I do think Hadzovic won that fight, you know, quite clearly. So I'm not sure where this. Well, Nick Hein's German, right? So, so yeah, the result seemed a little closer than what the outcome should have been. But still, like you mentioned, it was a very underwhelming performance, and there wasn't too much behind the shots that Hadzovic was throwing. And then, like I've already mentioned, he comes out in Polo Reyes fight and absolutely smokes him, and everyone's now like, holy shit, has he improved? Has he just developed in his career and looking amazing? And we will see. If this fight predominantly stays on the feet, you've got to favour Damir Hadzovic. You have to, because he is the better striker. He's the more technical striker. He packs a little bit more volume, and he seems a lot calmer in his striking as well. Whereas when Giagos starts striking, he fucking goes. You know what I mean? Like he throws hard, he throws fast, he's wild. So Hadzovic definitely is the better striker. So if the fight predominantly stays on the feet, then you have to favour Hadzovic. It's just, I don't think it's going to be predominantly on the feet. I think this is going to be a pure mixed martial arts fight. I think there's going to be striking. I think there's going to be punches. I think there's going to be kicks. I think there's going to be clinching. I think there's going to be takedowns. I think there's going to be a bit of grappling involved as well. And you know, I was saying on Twitter, I think it was today or yesterday, like, how many times have we seen an American wrestler, because that's what Giagos is. He was an MVP. You know, he's got a good wrestling background. How many times have we seen an American wrestler step into the cage with a European striker, and that striker just having no answer for him whatsoever? And it happens so often. A perfect example is Aljamain Sterling and Brett Johns. You know, I use this quite a lot, and I was high on Brett Johns, and you know, I had money on him in that fight. But it's just, it's that you just get deceived by it. Like, the American wrestlers are just on a totally different level to us Europeans. That it is what it is. That's just how it is. They, you know, they get brought up on wrestling over there. They've got it in the high schools and the colleges. It is just a totally different level. And Giagos mixes in his takedowns really, really well. Like, he strikes okay, like I say, it's not quite on the level of Hadzovic. It is a little wild, but he mixes in the takedowns nicely. His entries are clean. He gets straight in on the double, whether it be against the cage or whether it be in the middle of the cage. He reacts to strikes to level change as well. So there was times where Hirota was, you know, went to wing a bomb, a right hand or a jab, and he just went straight under it and level changed and took him down to the mat. That's when he was a little bit tired. And this brings me on to the next thing with his cardio. So again, I've heard from a few people that they've got cardio concerns, and actually, you know, you are right to have a few cardio concerns with Giagos in this fight, because he was controlling the fight with Hirota and he gassed out. Now, there's a couple of things to this, a couple of sides to it, and there's one truth either with either of these, what I'm about to tell you. I'm not quite sure which it is. You know, I'm going to take what Giagos said and believe that naturally. But before that Hirota fight, I listened to an interview with Giagos, and this is after I already put money down, by the way. And it was around the Thanksgiving time. Giagos was saying, you know, he's going to enjoy Thanksgiving a little bit, not too much, just a little bit. And the fight was in Australia, and he was going to get over there just a couple of days before they were due to fight. And suddenly alarm bells start ringing in my head, thinking, holy fuck, I've got money on this guy, and he's apparently going to enjoy Thanksgiving a little bit more than he would normally if he was having a fight around that time. And then he's not arriving till the country across the world until a couple of days before his fight. And I was thinking, holy shit, like, this is going to affect his cardio. And he was saying in that interview, you know, don't worry, it's not going to affect my cardio. And I was like, you know, I was sort of thinking, we'll see about that. And then he gets inside the cage against Hirota and he tires out. And I'm thinking, fuck, I saw this happening. But then you listen to an interview before this fight, and he actually says the reason he tired out was an adrenaline dump. And he said he openly admits it. He went in there, he tried to finish Hirota, he got excited, he got that adrenaline dump, and that's what fucked him and tired him for the rest of the fight. So, you know, one of those two things is true, but whichever one it is, I don't believe that is going to happen again. And if you look back at Giagos' previous fights, over the last 3, 4, 5, 6 fights, go back however long you want, I have not seen a cardio issue from Giagos. So I was quite surprised in what I saw in Australia against Hirota, but I just don't see that happening again. I think that Giagos is going to try and strike with Hadzovic early on. I think Hadzovic is going to start getting the better of him. I think Giagos is going to realise, okay, he's probably the better striker here. I'm going to take the European striker down to the mat. And I think that's what happens, man. Giagos also is very good in guard when he's on top. So we saw that against Hirota. Even when he was tired, even when he was to the point where he couldn't do anything pretty much because of how tired he was still landing strikes. He was still doing enough for the referee not to separate him and the referee not to stand them back up. And I just think he can do that against Hadzovic. If he does, it's going to be quite an unappealing fight from the neutral eye. But I think Giagos is going to land takedowns in this fight, and I think that's going to be the difference. I think in this fight, the takedowns and the top control is going to be the difference on the judges' scorecards come the end of the night. And for that reason, I'm going to take Christos Giagos to win, and I'm going to take him to win by decision. Now, in the last Showtime fight of the podcast, we've got Darko Stosic against Devin Clark. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing Darko Stosic back in the UFC. Obviously, we saw his debut back in July of last year, actually. So coming up to 12 months ago, where he defeated Jeremy Kimball via ground and pound in the first round. Obviously, prior to that, he'd been on the European regional scene, but he'd been pretty much beating everyone that was put in front of him. He's currently on a 9-fight win streak, and if you've seen this guy, I mean, he's also built like a tank. We were saying about Ilir Latifi earlier, being built like a tank. This guy's also built like a tank, and he possesses power. And what I really liked about the Jeremy Kimball fight was just how calm and composed he was when the two were standing and they were striking, because Kimball was moving around a lot, switching stances, feinting a lot with the jab, and I'm really just trying to mess with Stosic's timing and everything like that. But he remained very calm, very composed, and eventually got the win. I mean, he was pretty even on the feet up until the 3-minute mark of the first round. Then Kimball went for a takedown, shot in, and that's where we saw Stosic's judo background, and he reversed and took Kimball down. And within about 5 seconds, he'd hammered him with elbows and hammer fists, and the referee was stopping the fight. So I was really impressed with his UFC debut. Not just because of the way that he got Kimball out of there, But just like I say, how composed he was striking, and he does have power. I mean, he's got power in his hands, he's got power in his legs. He's finished guys with leg kicks, and we often talk about guys that he fought, that the people have fought on the regional scene or before they made it to the UFC, and the guys that he's fought have got pretty decent records. I know the guy before the UFC was 9-15, but before that he's fighting a guy who's 22-7, 34-13, 34-12. I mean, these are decent records against experienced guys, and yeah, he's been putting people away for his frame. He can go the distance. He's gone to a decision quite a few times in his career. I think three times he's gone to a decision, and he's come out with the victory on those occasions. So for his build and his frame and stuff, he also has a gas tank. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how he fares against Devin Clark here now. Brown Bear he's another dangerous guy. I know he's lost 2 of his last 3 fights, but one of them was against Aleksandar Rakic. Again, we'll talk about him in the podcast later on, but he's a very, very good and dangerous guy in the light heavyweight division. And then he got the win against Mike Rodriguez, and then his loss before that was to Jan Blachowicz, who was on his resurgence. Now, Clark is very much a wrestler. His background is wrestling, but he also does possess power in his hands. We saw that in the Rakic fight. He knocked Rakic off balance. I wouldn't say he knocked him down after about 2 seconds of the fight when Rakic tried to open it with a kick, and he countered that. And he also knocked Rakic down and nearly finished him with a left hand against the fence later on in that first round. He then landed a barrage of illegal knees. I forgot how illegal half of those knees were until I watched the fight back. I mean, that was just ridiculous. But that's going slightly off topic. But he is a guy, like I say, whose base is predominantly wrestling, but he does possess some power in his hands. But when you look through his record, a lot of his wins come by decision. So putting Stosic away, I don't think he's going to do that. So it all comes down to, for me, whether Stosic can defend the takedowns, utilise that judo background like he did against Kimball when Kimball shot him for the takedown, and avoid ending up on his back. And of this fight, I think he will. I mean, because he's big, he's strong. Like I say, he's got that judo background, and I know coming up against like Clark is a different beast. For me, he's a far better wrestler than Kimball was. But for what I've seen from Stosic, I really like him, and I really think he's got quite a high ceiling in this light heavyweight division. And yeah, I feel that he's going to be able to avoid the takedowns, or at least not get taken down and held down for long enough to rule whichever round that may be out of contention and give it to Clark. And yeah, and when the fight's standing, I really like Stosic. I think he's very composed. I think he mixes up his strikes well, throws them heavy leg kicks, which he can stop people with. We've seen before him stop people with the leg kicks, and yeah, I think he'll be able to outstrike Clark. So I am going with Darko Stosic to win this fight, and I think he's going to win a decision.
Yeah, Darko Stosic is the protege of Mirko Cro Cop.
Yeah, man.
Mirko Cro Cop spent invested a lot of time into this young kid. 27 years of age. He is still a kid in the sport, especially at 13-1 as well. He's only going to improve. He's only going to develop. And essentially, we've got an ex-heavyweight in Darko Stosic fighting an ex-middleweight in Devin Clark. So the size is going to be very noticeable in this fight. They're the same height, but Darko Stosic is going to be the much thicker guy. I think he's going to carry the much more power in the fight. In regards to what Devin Clark brings to the table, like you've already mentioned with the Alex Rakic fight, he was winging over on bombs. He has got power in his hand. He did drop Rakic. Rakic has got a good chin. Again, a few people question that, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But he's also got his wrestling background as well. So the dude can hang. You know, he's not a bad striker and he's not a bad wrestler. He's a decent all round fighter. The problem is I don't think he absolutely excels in any area. And I think he probably could excel in his wrestling down at middleweight, but up at light heavyweight, he seems to have a problem taking down the fighters that are much bigger than him, that are more stacked than him. So like Jan Blachowicz, he went in on a couple of takedowns with Jan Blachowicz, good entries, really well timed, pushed him in against the cage, tried to work the takedowns, but ultimately he just got bullied and muscled away, and his opponent, well, in that case, Blachowicz exited. Then the same thing with Rakic as well. He tried taking Rakic down, but again, Rakic was the bigger, strongest, more stacked guy, and he ended up doing the right things with the underhooks, and then just again bullying and muscling him off him and going again. And this seems to be a thing at light heavyweight. I genuinely think Devin Clark is one of those fighters where he's stuck between two weight classes, because he clearly cuts a lot of weight down to middleweight, but I think at light heavyweight he's undersized, and it's just one of those unfortunate situations. Some of these fighters fall into the in between categories, and Darko Stosic, like I said, ex heavyweight, is huge. He's strong, he's powerful. I think Devin Clark's going to run into the same problems trying to take someone like Stosic down as he did against Blachowicz and Rakic, and I think that with that being Devin Clark's path to victory in this fight, the wrestling, I think it's a huge problem for him. Stosic is the better striker. He's got a variety of kicks, like you've already mentioned. Obviously, you can attest that to a little bit of his mentor in Mirko Cro Cop. He's got powerful hands. He's calm. He's patient. Yes, he didn't throw too much volume against Jeremy Kimball. I do think some UFC debut jitters were involved in that as well, because you look at his tape and he's not normally that gun shy. So I think there is an argument for saying that, you know, it was his UFC debut. He was a little hesitant, and you know, that's just the way it is for some fighters. They come into the big stage under the brightest lights and they don't always perform on the first fight. But then Kimball tried to shoot in on him and he fucking threw him. Now that wasn't a fluke, right? The way he threw Kimball off him was not a one-time thing, and it was just the flow of the situation, the flow of the entry of the takedown. Go back and watch Stosic's second fight against Dion Sterling, because he fucking threw Sterling out the ring. And I'm not kidding. Sterling shot in, and he got his hooks in right, and he just moved his hips out, and he fucking threw him through the ropes to the point where one of the corner, it was right next to one of the corner guys, and those guys were trying to hold him from falling, obviously, on the floor out the ring. Man, I'm telling you, the dude's got good takedown defense. He's got a good sprawl as well. So again, in that fight with Sterling, he tried to take him down again, and he was sprawling well. He was sprawling quickly, and we've even seen him take his opponent down as well. So he's got good takedown offense. Not that I think he's going to take down Devin Clark. I think unless Clark's tired, I don't really see him taking him down or even trying to be honest. I think his game plan here will just be to stuff the takedowns coming in from Clark, muscle him off the cage when he tries to pin up with him, and just strike him with him. And I genuinely think Stosic is a much more technical, he's a striker than Clark. He's got more weapons in his toolbox. I genuinely think all around on the feet, Stosic is going to be too much for Clark. And ultimately, I think the fight's going to be won and lost on the feet, with Darko Stosic being the winner and Devin Clark being the loser. Unless Devin Clark can really get his wrestling going and tire Stosic out, I don't see him winning this fight. It is a possibility him doing that, but like I say, from the tape that I've seen, which is all I can go from, Stosic has got good takedown defense, whether that be trying to throw somebody out the ring or a cage, or whether that just being a nice sprawl and separating. So I think the fight's going to be won on the feet by Darko Stosic, and I can actually see him knocking Devin Clark out late as well. So I've got Darko Stosic to win. I'm going to take him to win by knockout. And now we move on to the parlay piece, the first parlay piece of the card is in the main event of the evening. We've got Aleksandar Gustafsson versus Anthony Smith. Now, for me, this is quite a comfortable parlay piece. I'm obviously taking Gustafsson. I say obviously, you never know. I might have been taking the underdog Smith in a parlay. Never, but it is what it is. Aleksandar Gustafsson, I just think in the hometown, in his home country of Sweden, I think he's going to thrive in this fight. I think he's going to have the crowd behind him. I think he's going to feel that energy inside of there. In regards to a style versus style matchup, I think Gustafsson trumps Anthony Smith absolutely everywhere. Gustafsson's big, he's 6'4", so he's going to have the height, he's going to have the reach over Anthony Smith. I think he's the more technical striker. Smith is more of the technical brawler, shall we call it. But yeah, Gustafsson, wide variety of strikes. Again, like I've just said with Stosic, he's got a lot of weapons in his toolbox to use. I think his movement's good. He's a world-class fighter, man, and he just struggles. Like I said we about DC earlier on. When you're not named John Jones, he tends to shine in his fights. It's just that problem of John Jones that all these light heavyweights obviously seem to have. But outside of the John Jones fights, man, he's a world-class fighter. He's also got a great ground game as well. We saw that in the Blachowicz fight. In that Blachowicz fight, it seemed like Blachowicz just had some good reads on him, and Gustafsson noticed that, good fight IQ, and started level changing, taking the fight to the mat and just controlling on the mat, which is something that he could do here against Anthony Smith. And it would actually be, in my opinion, the best game plan for Gustafsson, because although I do think Gustafsson is the better striker, he lands more volume, is more accurate, as long as he strikes with Anthony Smith, he's giving Smith a chance to knock him out, which is, for me, Smith's path to victory in this fight. Now, like I say, for Gustafsson, if he was to just go in there and just take Smith down, put Smith on his back, Smith isn't going to finish a fight on his back. Smith is going to lose rounds on his back. Smith is going to tire on his back. And remember, this is 5 rounds, so I genuinely believe if this is a striking battle and Gustafsson doesn't opt to take the fight to the mat, I think that Smith can go all 5 rounds, and I think he can be dangerous for 5 rounds. So the fight ultimately is in Gustafsson's hands, and it all depends on what he wants to do. I'm not saying that he can't beat Smith striking. He can. It's just if he stays striking, I feel that that's just giving Smith an opportunity that Gustafsson could take away from him. So it's going to be very interesting to see what Gustafsson comes out to do, whether he just strikes on the back foot, uses movement, footwork, angles, exits to keep away from that power of Smith. Maybe that's what he opts to do if he decides to strike. But like I said, I don't really know how to break this down anymore. Smith's was on a bit of a resurgence. I do feel that he hit the top of the iceberg with that John Jones fight, and now I just don't think that he can elevate that moment anymore in his MMA career. And he's already been talking about how he's got plans of taking a little bit of time away, and he has been an active fighter, so you got to hand it to him for that. But just taking a little bit of time away after this fight and things like that, and like I say, I just feel that he can't elevate that fight with John Jones. I don't think he will ever have another title shot. I think that's the peak of his career, definitely. But unfortunately, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but the only way for Anthony Smith right now is downwards. Like I say, you can't beat a title shot against potentially the greatest MMA fighter that's ever walked the planet. So it's going to be one of those things where I just feel that he's gonna slowly digress. And Gustafsson, like I say, I'm not saying he's at his peak either. I think his first fight with John Jones was probably the peak of his career, but I just still think he's a much better fighter than Anthony Smith, wherever the fight goes, wherever it's staying standing or whether it goes to the mat or whether it's a dull fight inside the clinch. I just feel Gustafsson has got this fight covered from every base, really. Now, Gustafsson's sitting at a -325 favourite, which is obviously understandable. I do think that the the line. I don't think the line's off. I do think it's going to be a comfortable win for Gustafsson, and that's why I think he's one part of the parlay piece, because at -325 it's too high to play straight, but it's a damn good line to parlay with another fighter, which I'll talk about in a minute. But John, Alexander Gustafsson, Anthony Smith, who have you got?
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. It's Gustafsson. I'm obviously going to pick Gustafsson because I'm pretty certain, if my memory serves me right, that I picked Gustafsson to beat John Jones in their latest fight. So
absolutely, you did. Try and explain that one.
Well, I'm a big Gustafsson fan, aren't I? So maybe my heart ruled over my head in that circumstance. But this one, there's no heart, there's no head involved. It's purely looking at the facts and how these guys match up against each other, and I can't see any other winner than Gustafsson. I mean, you've covered it really. For me, he's better everywhere than Anthony Smith. Smith has power. We've seen he's got power at light heavyweight. He's on a bit of a resurgence in his career. But when I don't want to sound disrespectful to Smith, because Smith he seems like a very, very good dude. He's been around for a long time, and he's definitely deserved his shot at John Jones. I mean, it's fantastic to see that resurgence, and then obviously the fact that he took on John Jones, arguably the greatest of all time. I mean, like you say, that's a fantastic achievement in itself. But when you really look at the fights, I mean, after that Thiago Santos loss, he fought Rashad Evans. Rashad Evans was long done before that fight. Shogun Hua, I mean, we all love Shogun again, but he's definitely on the decline, and his career will be over and done in the next few years, I would imagine. He's been in some absolute wars, so it's no surprise that he's a little chinny and susceptible to being knocked out. And not taking anything away from Smith, but because it was a fantastic finish. But those two fights, I really can't gauge anything from. The Oezdemir fight, as we spoke about earlier, that was a good win. But again, Oezdemir, I mentioned in that the breakdown of his fight with Latifi, that I don't really know where Oezdemir is or what level, and I don't think he performed particularly well against Smith in that fight at all. Again, not taking anything away from Smith. Smith fought well, but he tired badly. Oezdemir tired more, and yeah, it was pretty sloppy by the time it was finished in the third round, and then he got completely and utterly dominated against John Jones. I was waiting for, in that John Jones fight, for him to just come out and do something, because I thought this is his moment. He's like one shot. I say one shot. He's only 30 years old, so you never know, he could get another shot. But this is his big shot, I'll say. And yeah, he just kind of accepted a lackluster defeat. And I was expecting to come out and one of the later rounds when he knew he was down and just throw something wild or crazy. But it just never really seemed to happen. He just tried and be more technical than John Jones, which unfortunately is not going to happen if your name is anybody. So yeah, I was a bit disappointed about that, but yeah, so yeah, for me it's kind of that 3-fight win streak it's good. Obviously you can only beat who's in front of you, but a couple of those guys, I mean, were definitely on the decline. Gustafsson, but one worry about Gus is his mentality, and I mean, I don't know if anyone here has read his book, and that was, I think, if I remember rightly, maybe he wrote that came out just after the DC fight, and he was kind of like up in the air about where his career would go from there, because obviously he lost the title fight to John Jones, he lost to Anthony Johnson in Sweden in the big stadium event, and then he lost to Cormier in that title fight, and he was kind of, where's my career going now? But then he came back, he beat Blachowicz, very good game plan. He absolutely boxed up Glover Teixeira in a fantastic performance, one of his best performances for years, and then he fought Jones again, and again, similar to Anthony Smith, he was just kind of, Gustafsson was just kind of flat in that fight, and he looked okay for the first round. I thought he may have edged, I think round one, if I remember right, one of the first two rounds he may have edged, but then I think it was round one, and then he just kind of Jones turned it up, and Gustafsson kind of plateaued, and he just looked pretty average when Jones got the fight to the mat. And yeah, I think the good thing about Gustafsson's mentality is that he's fighting in Sweden in front of his hometown fans. And obviously, I was at the Rumble Johnson fight in Stockholm, and you could see how utterly devastated he was to lose in front of his hometown fans. So if this fight was happening somewhere else outside of Sweden, that's one thing that could worry me about Gustafsson, whether his head's right, whether he thinks that's it for him. And title shots now, he's had 3. He hasn't won any of them. Jones is still young enough to be around for as long as Gustafsson's around. There's dangerous guys coming up who are younger than Gustafsson, and for me, he always seems to be a kind of guy that I worry that one day I'm going to log onto social media and I've seen that he's announced his retirement, because I don't always know whether I think he's a guy who just wants that belt, and I think if he thinks that the belt is now out of his reach or he won't get another shot, then his time's pretty limited in the sport unless he changes that mentality of his, and that would be my only worry. But like I said, the fight is happening in his home country in Stockholm, and I think he'll want to make amends to that Anthony Johnson fight where he lost in front of his home fans, and I think he'll want to get the W and put on an impressive display in front of his home fans. So, yeah, I think how the fight will actually play itself, I think you're very much right. I don't think he'll put himself under any danger of Smith knocking him out, because with Smith's knockout power, I think he'll take Smith down early on. Even if the fight does stay standing, Gustafsson for me is one of the best boxers in the light heavyweight division. He's got fantastic boxing, and he's also got fantastic offensive wrestling for European guys, because obviously we know usually our American counterparts are the stronger wrestlers, but for MMA wrestling, Gustafsson's one of the best across all the weight divisions for wrestling, because we saw him take down Jones, we saw him take down DC, Blachowicz, he was taken down at will in that fight when he realised that he was having difficulties on the feet, and I think he'll be able to take Smith down if he wants to, and I think he will take him down, wear him out on the ground, cause some damage, tire Smith out, and I think it'll finish similarly to the to Glover Teixeira. I think round 4 or 5. I think Gus will just swarm, put a beating on him, and yeah. So I'm going with Alexander Gustafsson to win this fight via stoppage in round 4, round 5.
Cool. Now we move on to the next parlay piece, and that's in the third light heavyweight fight of the last 3 fights of the card. We've got Jimi Manuwa versus Aleksandar Rakic. Now, it's not going to come as a surprise to anybody that knows me which way I'm going here. So the second parlay of the parlay piece would be on Alex Rakic at minus. He's roughly around minus 225 on average across the board with the bookies. And unfortunately, just like when Mark Diakiese fought against Joe Duffy, I can't really break this fight down, guys. I know the game plan of Alex. I work with Alex and his team at Heavy Duty Fight Management. We're flying out there to Stockholm on Thursday to be with Alex and obviously support him whilst he's there. So I can't really talk about style versus style and how I think the fight's going to go, because like I say, I know game plans and I can't do it for obvious reasons. However, I do want to clear a couple of things up though. So one of the narratives, well, it's not really a narrative because it happened, is the comment of, oh, well, Alex Rakic got dropped by Devin Clark, so he must be chinny. And I'm telling you now, Alex is not chinny. And I spoke to Alex, I think it was the day after that Devin Clark fight. And I asked him, how hurt were you? And he said to me, honestly, bro, he said, I wasn't hurt. He said, yes, he knocked me off balance. Yes, he caught me with a big shot. But he said, I got right back up. I knew where I was. I wasn't dazed. I wasn't seeing double. And I went straight back to work once I'd got back up. And you know what? He wouldn't lie to me. I mean, some people would be like, oh, he's probably just saying that. But Alex wouldn't lie. We've got a good relationship, and he would tell me the truth. You know, if he was hurt, he would say, bro, I was hurt. I didn't know what happened, etc. But that's just not the case. And you can also see that. I mean, if you don't believe the words that he said, you can also see that as well in the fight, because when he stood back up, he didn't throw a chicken dance, and start wobbling around anywhere, and he didn't look like his focus was elsewhere. He looked like, oh fuck, I've just been dropped, get back up. You know what I mean? And that's what happened. He got straight back up and he carried on. And then, man, he took 7 illegal knees to the head. Like, that would put any other man out. I'm telling you, it would put any other man out. These weren't blocked illegal knees. These were flush illegal knees. He had fucking 2 hands on the floor, so there's no way he could have blocked those knees. So I'm telling you, the dude's tough as shit. He's got a great chin. Don't let the Devin Clark catching him, convince you otherwise. And Devin Clark is a 205-pound fighter that threw an overhand bomb that landed flush on another human being's jaw. I wouldn't be surprised if anybody didn't drop to that punch, So he recovered, and then he fucking knocked him out. So, that says it all for me. From Jimi Manuwa's point of view, this is where I worry about Manuwa, because he's lost 3 in a row. Volkan Oezdemir, like I've already said, bit weird. Jan Blachowicz put an absolute clinic on him for 2 rounds anyway. Obviously, Manuwa did take a round off him. And then the key fight for me is this Maheta Santos fight, because that shit is batshit crazy. Like, go and watch that fight if you've not seen it. Fuck, if you have seen it, I've just reminded you to go and watch it again. So as soon as you've listened to the podcast, go and fucking watch that fight, because it'll be the best, 2 rounds of your life. Well, nearly 2 rounds. But the problem is, and the worry is, Jimi Manuwa didn't get knocked out cold instantly. It was a war. And I'm telling you, his chin will not be the same after that. It won't be. It was a war. If Manuwa had gone into that fight and Maheta Santos had caught him with something clean early on and dropped him or knocked him out with one clean shot, then it may be a little different. And you might be thinking, oh well, that would be a one bomb clean knock him out. Surely that's not great for him. Well, no, it's not great for a fighter to get finished with one shot. But when you're taking damage first before you get knocked out cold, that's worse. That's the worst thing that can happen. If you're gonna get knocked out, it's better for your body to shut down when it should shut down. And you go unconscious and you wake up, you fight another day, your head's going to be sore for a week or so. But when you take all that punishment first on your chin, your body's holding up, your chin's holding up, and you're taking all that damage, that's not good for your head, that's not good for your brain. And I think at Jimi Manuwa's age of nearly 40 years old, 3-fight losing streak, 2 of those being knockouts as well, 1 being, like I said, a horrendous war. That's where I worry for Jimi Manuwa. Now, on the flip side to all this, Jimi Manuwa could absolutely knock Alex out. I'm not saying he can't. I'm saying Alex has got a good chin, and this is the 205-pound division, and Jimi Manuwa hits like a truck. If he catches any man at 205, doesn't matter whether it's Alex or anybody else, or how good the chin is or how bad the chin is, if Jimi Manuwa catches another 205-pounder with a big punch, then he can definitely knock them out. Like, that's absolutely a possibility. I'm not saying it's not, but the point is, in this fight, Jimi Manuwa has got a puncher's chance. And when someone's got a puncher's chance and their opponent is a young, surging, freakishly athletic dude, and I'm telling you, I hear all the stuff that comes over from people around Alex about how much of a freak athlete he is. When you've got that sort of guy on the opposite side of the cage that's minus 225, then I'm always going to favour that guy. I think Alex is a good bet in this fight. I think he's going to tear Jimmy apart. I've got a funny feeling Jimmy's going to retire after this fight as well, because I actually asked Alex myself. I says to him, are you surprised that Jimi Manuwa's took the fight with you? Because Alex has a lot of people that turn the fight down with him. And he says no. He said, Jimmy would have accepted any fight. And I think that he would have accepted any fight in Sweden, because potentially he may want to retire in Sweden. And I think this could be his last fight. That's just an opinion. I obviously don't know if there's any substance behind that or not. It's just an opinion. But like I say, 3-fight losing streak. If he goes out there and loses to Alex, that's 4-fight losing streak at 40 ye're old. You're sort of putting 2 and 2 together and getting 4. The parlay, Alex at minus 225 with Gustafsson at minus 325 sort of gets you around minus 113, which is a fucking incredible line when you consider all things about the two fights. I think the parlay is a good parlay, but John, Alex Rakic, Jimi Manuwa, who have you got?
Yeah, I'm going to keep this pretty short and simple because you've covered most bases. But I have no affiliation to Aleksandar Rakic, so I can talk about how I think this fight will play out. Yeah, as we've seen before, he's a dangerous guy, and he all round dangerous guy. He's got power in his hands. He can finish fights, but he's a very good wrestler as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if he decided to try and take Jimi Manuwa down in the first round. Maybe a little feeling out process on the feet, but ultimately take some of that power and some of those so the legs away from Jimi Manuwa. I think he might try to chop him down as well with leg kicks and yeah, just try and take away that foundation, that base of all the power, the legs, the cardio, the strength, and then that fight becomes even more winnable for Aleksandar Rakic. And as you mentioned with Jimi Manuwa, again pure guesswork, but I think win or lose, I think Jimi Manuwa retires here, because obviously we know All Stars has been his base for years now, training with the guys over there, Latifi and Gustafsson and all those guys, and yeah, it's like a second home to him, and I wouldn't be surprised if he won, if he hung up the gloves. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he lost, if he decided to hang up the gloves. So I do think you're right, and this will be his last fight that we see from the poster boy. But yeah, as you said, I worry about the cumulative damage he's taken. That Oezdemir knockout was nasty. Anthony Johnson. Then obviously Santos was a real back and forth slugfest war, and I do think he's chinny now, and not so much that you'll just knock him out and fold him with one shot. I know that Oezdemir pretty much did, but I'll give him more credit than that. He's still tough as old boots. He's our Jimi Manuwa, and but yeah, I do think you can knock him down or stun him or wobble him now quite. I don't want to say the word easily because that's disrespectful, but he is prone to that, and yeah, coming up against a strong guy like Rakic, I do worry for him, and yeah, so I think it's going to be Rakic come out round one, take away the base, leg kicks, body shots, and body kicks, take down, tire Jimmy down a bit, and take away some of that base, and then yeah, I think he's going to finish Jimi Manuwa in the second round with strikes. So yeah, I am also going with Aleksandar Rakic to win this fight. I think he wins it in round 2 via knockout or TKO.
Now it's time for the dogfight, and we believe the best underdog at UFC Stockholm is Makwan Amirkhani. He faces Chris Fishgold, and it's actually a bit. I feel like it's a bit of a weird pick from me because I'm a big Chris Fishgold fan. Obviously he's English, but he's exciting as fuck. He comes out to fight, he comes out to throw down, he leaves it all in the cage. He's also a good dude as well. I've heard interviews with him. He's just all round what you want from an MMA fighter, and I absolutely love the dude. But from Makwan Amirkhani's side, he's not a fighter that I've ever been massively high on, and I'm not saying he's not skilled, because obviously I'm picking him in this fight, and he's coming under the underdog of the underdog of UFC Stockholm in our opinion. But yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. I'm going with Amirkhani to win. I just think that he's got the right skill set, the right tools to beat somebody like Chris Fishgold. But I'm telling you, the first round is going to be, or the first 2.5 minutes is going to be very, very scary for Makwan Amirkhani in this fight, because Chris Fishgold comes out like a bull and he lands shots. We saw him in the Calvin Kattar fight. He was landing on Calvin Kattar. I think he even wobbled him at one point as well. Even took Kattar down momentarily. That's the other thing. He's got good takedowns. He's got a good ground game. We saw in the Daniel Teymur fight, he ended up getting the rear naked choke in the second round. So like I say, his grappling game, his submission game is very on point. But the thing is, that's sort of where Amirkhani thrives, and his predominant base and background is wrestling. And we saw in the Jason Knight fight that he can defend takedowns. He is good in scrambles. He has got an offensive takedown game himself. He was taking Knight down also, and I think he's going to match up well with Fishgold from the wrestling and grappling perspective. I really do, and the scrambles are going to be really fun as well, especially early on in this fight. But I think Chris Fishgold's going to come out, and I think that he's going to be able to run straight through him from a wrestling and grappling perspective, and I think he's going to be in for a rude awakening, because Amirkhani, for like I say, I've never been a huge fan of the guy, but the dude is a skilled wrestler. He's skilled in the scrambles, and like I've already mentioned a couple of times now, he's grappling and his transitions are on point as well. So that's going to be really interesting. The only worrying thing that you get from Amirkhani is the fact that he's very inactive. So he fought once in 2016, he fought once in 2017, he fought once in 2018. He's now looking like, unless he fights at some point at the end of the year, it's going to be once in 2019 as well. So he's very inactive, and it sort of begs the question why. Well, I know why for the last couple of times. So before the Jason Knight fight, he went to work on his boxing. He felt like his wrestling was great. He wanted to work on his boxing, and he really put so much time into his boxing. And actually, he came out with a Jason Knight fight, and his hands looked good. They looked crisp, they looked sharp, but he did get dropped. And Jason Knight probably should have finished the fight with strikes, opposed to trying to jump on him and submit him. I think that was a huge error from Jason Knight's perspective. So if that was another dude, he could have probably finished the fight. So his boxing looked better, but it still had holes, specifically defensively. Now he's gone away again for another year, and I believe again it's for his boxing. He seems to be completely obsessed with getting his boxing absolutely like to perfection, or is as perfect as you can in mixed martial arts. So he's going to come out in this Fishgold fight, and I'm expecting to see he's got good hands. And you know what? If he genuinely becomes a really good striker and gets his boxing crisp, he's going to be a fucking dangerous guy, because his wrestling and grappling's already there, and then his his striking will be there as well. So he's going to end up being a lot of trouble for a lot of fighters. Now, I don't know how his boxing is going to hold up when Chris Fishgold's coming at him at 100 miles an hour, and this is where I think he's going to be dangerous for this first 2.5 minutes to 5 minutes of this fight, because Chris Fishgold, like I've already mentioned, comes out hard, he comes out fast, and he comes out with purpose. But that's his downfall, because when he doesn't get his opponent out of there, he tires, he gasses out. And that's when Amirkhani is going to take over. Those takedowns will be so easy for him to get. He's going to be able to hold Fishgold down. Or if he doesn't want to do that, I think that he can just be defending desperate takedowns from Fishgold. I think he can be popping a jab in his face. I think he can be using his 1-2 and using his movement and just making Chris Fishgold tire more and more as the fight goes on. I just think if Amirkhani can get out of that first round with Fishgold, I think wherever he wants that fight to go from therefore onwards, I think it's going to be relatively, I wouldn't say straightforward, but it's going to be much easier the longer the fight goes on. It's typically one of these fights. So this is why I think Amirkhani is value at plus money. He's sort of anywhere between plus 100, plus 110 right now. Like I said, he's an underdog. It's plus money. I do think it holds a lot of value, because I don't think he gets finished in that first round by Fishgold. I think Fishgold tries. I think there might be a few scary moments for Amirkhani where it could be close, or it could be like, oh, holy fuck, move, do something, it could be one of those fights. But ultimately, the bottom line is, I think he comes out of that first round, and when he comes out of that first round, I think that fight is going to be a lot more simpler for him going forward. I don't think he puts Fishgold away. Fishgold's tough as fuck. I'd be surprised if Amirkhani knocked him out. Maybe if he finished him catching a neck or something in a submission, if Chris Fishgold is very, very tired. But again, I feel it's quite unlikely. I think Amirkhani is going to win on the scorecards. I think he's the best underdog on the night. Amirkhani to win via decision. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I'm with you on this. I think Mr. Finland is he's going to win this fight, and I think he's the best underdog pick on the card. I mean, you've covered a lot of bases, but Fishgold, I think in the first round he'll be very dangerous. He'll come crashing forward. He throws pretty wild bombs, and yeah, he's got a decent wrestling and very good grappling credentials to back it up as well. And we've seen him before. He's competed on the Polaris tournaments, things like that. He's very dangerous on the mat, but my worry is he's a pretty big guy for this weight class, featherweight, and whether that size and the muscle and things will tire him out as the fight goes on. And I think that will be the case. And as you alluded to, Amirkhani got knocked down not once but twice by Jason Knight in a very short period in that win, and in the first round as well. And although he got back to his feet pretty quickly after Jason Knight went for the submission, and he kind of laughed at him and stuck his tongue out and gave the impression that all was fine. I think you're right. I think if Jason Knight would have just kept swarming him with strikes there, I think he would have walked away with the victory. And it's those fine margins, and absolutely Chris Fishgold could do something similar. Fishgold for me has got heavier hands than Jason Knight, and he could definitely put Amirkhani down and finish him with strikes. But I think Amirkhani will utilise that. Like you say, he's been away again for a year, working on his boxing. And he did look better against Knight on the feet, a lot better than we've seen him in previous fights. His range and his movement was a lot smoother as well. And yeah, I think if he can fight sensibly and fight smart in that first round, I think his wrestling will take over, because he's a very, very, very good wrestler with a very heavy top pressure. I mean, Jason Knight, I know Jason Knight hasn't got the best takedown defense. He tries to utilise that rubber guard, and so he kind of just lets his opponent take him down. But yeah, even so, you've still got to do it, and you've still got to defend the dangerous submission attempts from guys like Jason Knight. And Amirkhani took Arnold Allen to a very close split decision. I think Arnold Allen's got a very high ceiling. He's a very good fighter, a very dangerous guy. And I think he's definitely a top 15 guy in the division. And yeah, Amirkhani went to a split decision with him. And yeah, I do just think his strong wrestling game will come through after the first round. And if, like I say, Fishgold can catch him with something in the first round, he can absolutely win it. If Fishgold's gas tank can last for 10 minutes, he can absolutely win this fight. But based on the values and the betting lines and how fighters match up on this card, I do think Amirkhani has the tools to beat Fishgold, and he's the best value as an underdog. And I also think that he may lose round one, but he'll go on to dominate 2 and 3 with his wrestling and take a decision. I don't think he gets Fishgold out of there in this one. So yeah, I'm also going with Makwan Amirkhani to win this fight via decision.
And with the breakdowns complete, we'll now enter the quick fire round. So first up in the quick fire round is Daniel Teymur versus the newcomer Sungbin Jo. John, who have you got?
Yeah, Teymur really needs to win this fight. Obviously, we've seen he's lost his last 3 in a row. 2 of those have been losses via rear naked choke as well. But he's fought some tough guys, and he's going up against, for what I've seen, a pretty exciting guy in Sungbin Jo, the Korean Falcon. We've seen the Korean Superboy, we've seen the Korean Zombie. Now we've got the Korean Falcon. What more could you want? But yeah, he if you look at his last fight against Jun Young Hong, I think I've pronounced that correctly on TFC. Jun Young Hong. Yeah, that fight went into the 4th round, and he was getting pretty wild, and his gas tank held it well. He's got wins via strikes. He's got wins via submission. He's tall. He's quite long for the weight class. I mean, he's about 5'11", and I like the Korean Falcon. He looks tough. He looks like he can take a shot. I think this fight will play out mainly on the feet, but I'm going with the Korean Falcon to win this fight. I think Jo Sungbin, or Sungbin Jo, however it is pronounced, I think he's going to get the win in this one.
Yeah, I'm going with Sungbin Jo as well. I actually think the dude's got pretty decent fundamentals, crisp striking. Obviously, we never really know exactly what we're going to get with him coming from regionals over into the UFC can be quite deceiving, but I'm just finding it really hard to pick Daniel Teymur to win a fight right now. The dude's got skills, clear skills in his striking and his Muay Thai, just like his brother. But the problem Daniel Teymur has is when he comes out of round one, again, his gas tank is just horrific. And I can genuinely see another scenario where he takes round one against Sungbin Joe having a little bit of UFC jitters, but then Sungbin Joe just coming back in rounds 2 and 3 when he's tired and just naturally putting it on Daniel Teymur. I think he's going to finish him as well. I just really see Teymur gassing in this fight, and Sungbin Joe's not a small dude either. He's going to be much bigger than Daniel Teymur. I think he's going to be aggressive in there. I think his striking's going to be crisp. Like I say, he could drop round one, but I think he's going to come back in the later rounds, and I think he's going to knock Daniel Teymur out. So I've got Sungbin Joe to win. I'm going to take him to win via knockout. Now, in the next quick-fire fight, we've got Tonya Evinger versus Lina Lansberg. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this fight I think is going to be ugly and gritty. I think it's going to be a battle of clinch, who can hold the other one on the fence and do the more damage with the knees, the elbows, the dirty boxing, and not get the position reversed or do enough to ensure that the referee doesn't step in and separate them. But if the referee does, I think it's going to be a case of rinse and repeat and go back to the same position. Now, these two ladies have got a lot of very similar opponents actually. Yana Kunitskaya, Aspen Ladd, Cyborg, and he's another one. And Lansberg has got some decent wins. I mean, especially those wins over Lucy Pudilova as well. But for me in this fight, it's going to be really close because, like I say, the way that the fight is going to play out, I don't think there's going to be anyone who clearly stands out. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a complete mismatch on the scorecards as well, with maybe a 30-27 to one and then 29-28 to the other fighter. Something that kind of closeness in this fight. But I think Tonya Evinger is going to do enough to win this fight. I think she is the slightly better in the clinch. I think she'll be slightly heavier in the clinch as well and be able to press Lansberg against the fence and kind of have a way with her a bit more so than the other way around. And for that reason, I think that she'll get the decision in the judges' eyes.
Yeah, I'm picking Tonya Evinger to win. Again, it's just going to be one of those ugly, gritty fights, like you've said, and it's going to be one that's predominantly spent on the cage. Again, just repeating a lot of what you've just said, John, in regards to the ref splitting them up, and then they'll go back to that same position. First and foremost, though, with this fight, like the line is fucking ridiculous for it, though. Like, Tonya Evinger is currently sitting at like -280 with Lansberg at +240. That's a fucking off line. But I am going to pick Evinger to win the fight. I just think she's the grittier, the uglier fighter. I do think she's going to have a strength advantage in there as well, which when you're fighting on the cage in the clinch is a big advantage if you're the stronger fighter. So I think Evinger's going to win. I'll be really surprised if there's a finish in this fight, but I'm going to take Tonya Evinger to win. I'm going to take her to win via decision. Now, in the next quick fire fight, we've got Stevie Ray versus the returning Leonardo Santos. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see Leonardo Santos back in action. I mean, we've the last time we had the pleasure of his company in the octagon was back in 2016, UFC 204, Bisping versus Henderson 2. So it's been nearly 3 years since we've last seen him. But man, the guy's a dangerous guy. And the only sad thing is that he's had those 3 years out, and he's now 39 years of age. And you have to look now and say, is he past his best and could he be on the decline? It's hard to tell until we see him in there. And again, will ring rust play any factor? Possibly, but yeah, he's a dangerous guy all around because he's a very, very well decorated grappler. I think he's won 8 or 9 jiu-jitsu tournaments, big prestigious jiu-jitsu tournaments previously, and his bread and butter is getting the fight to the mat and being dangerous there. But fighters are so worried about his ground game that it leaves openings, and we saw that in the Kevin Lee fight where he knocked out Kevin Lee via strikes in round 1. So Santos is a guy that can win this fight anywhere, and I'm really excited to see him back. And he's coming up against Stevie Ray, who Stevie Ray for me is just one of those guys who's all round decent, but doesn't really stand out anywhere in particular. When you look at some of his wins that he's got in the UFC, Mikel Laboute, Ross Pearson, Joe Lozon, Jasin Ayari. I mean, Ross Pearson in 2016 is a decent win, but I think Pearson was still on the decline then. Joe Lozon in 17, similar. And he's lost against guys who can take the fight to the mat, Kajan Johnson, Alan Patrick. And yeah, I think Santos is going to be able to get this fight to the mat, and I think he's going to be able to work his excellent grappling there. Like I say, he's dangerous on the feet, so even if he stays standing, it could be quite even. The only thing that worries me is the potential ring rust, and obviously the years catching up on Santos. But I'm going with Santos to win this fight, and I think he will. I think he'll submit Stevie Ray in round 2.
Yeah, I'm going exactly the same as well. It is a tough fight to pick, though, because, like I said, Leonardo Santos has been out for nearly 3 years. He's 39 years old, so it's not exactly like a prime time for him to jump back into MMA, wherever he's been. He could have still been training all this time and, just not in action inside a cage. I'm not really sure, but like I say, it's not a prime spot for a fighter to be really coming back and making a resurgence when you're 39 years old and you've been out for, like I've already mentioned, for nearly 3 years. But the dude hasn't lost in 10 years, and he's got some good wins in that run as well. Adriano Martins, Kevin Lee, Anthony Rocco Martin. He drew against Norman Park, so. It's a really tough fight to pick because Stevie Ray, like you said, he's not exactly a fighter that's going to set the world alight, but he shows decent fundamentals. He won his last fight against Yasin Ayari with predominantly leg kicks and movement, and he faded a little bit late. Then flipping back to Leonardo Santos, his takedown offense isn't that great, but you've made a good point, John. Fighters are that scared of going to the mat with him. They're scared of the takedown coming in, therefore it leaves openings with the striking. It's a common thing that happens with world-class grapplers, which is exactly what Leonardo Santos is. I mean, the thing is, you've got to ask yourself the question, does Leonardo Santos get the fight to the mat at least once in this fight with a couple of minutes to work? I think the answer to that question is yes, and for that reason, I'm going to take Leonardo Santos to win. I'm going to take him to win via submission. Now, in the next quick fire fight, we've got Nick Heine versus Frank the Crank Camacho. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I'm excited to see this one purely due to the fact that I'm excited to see Frank Camacho because he's very rarely in a boring fight, and obviously he's coming into this fight off the back of that extremely brutal head kick loss to Jeff Neal at UFC 228, and yeah, I think a fight against Nick Heine is a good fight to take for him right now and a good opponent to go up against because Heine doesn't really have that knockout power. When he wins fights, they tend to be via decision. It's going to be tough to decide how it goes. I think it'll play out mainly on the feet. I mean, I don't really see either of these guys particularly going to take it to the ground. I think they've both got good judo backgrounds. But I don't think we see any of them really go for the for the takedowns. I think they'll be happy to play it out on the feet. Camacho has the power and the aggression. Nick Heine is quite technical, as I mentioned in a breakdown earlier. He likes to utilise that jab a lot, but again, he's quite he throws. Although he doubles and triples up on that jab, he doesn't really throw anything else behind that. He just tends to throw one or two strikes, and I think that's his downfall. But I'm going with Frank Camacho to win this fight. I think he's unless he gasses out terribly, because his gas tank is quite questionable. But I think he does enough in rounds 1 and 2 on the feet to get the nod in the judges' eyes. I think Nick Heine will come back, but I don't think Nick Heine will have enough in him to finish it in round 3. So for that reason, I think Frank Camacho will win a decision.
Yeah, I'm taking Frank Camacho to win too, but I'm actually going to take him to win by knockout. And I think it's a little bit different in this fight to what you've just mentioned, because I actually think it's going to be Camacho early or Heine late. Now, Heine's durable and Heine has got a gas tank to go 15 minutes, absolutely no problem. Now, the reason I think that Camacho's got to get this fight done early is because this fight's at £155. It's a lightweight fight, and Camacho's taking it on short notice. Now, Camacho has fought at welterweight before, and obviously he does look big at welterweight as well. The dude cuts a lot of weight. So with this fight being short notice and he's got a weight cut on top of that, I genuinely think that he's got to get this fight done early, because if he doesn't, and if Nick Hein weathers some sort of storm, I think Nick Hein will take over in rounds 2 and 3. I think Camacho will start fading really, really badly, and it'll just make it easier for Nick Hein to go on and either get a stoppage late or win on the scorecards. But I think that at 35 years old now, I think Nick Hein was hurt against Damir Hadzovic at points in that fight. Obviously, didn't look amazing against David Hamos when he fought him either. So I just think that right now, at 35 years old, I think Hein can be got out. I think he can be hurt. And Camacho is powerful, man. He's going to be a very, very powerful 155er, weight cut or short notice or not. I just think that Camacho, if he starts really teeing off on Hein, I think he's going to hurt him. When Hein comes forward and he strikes, he does leave openings defensively. I think Camacho can definitely take advantage of that. I think he will take advantage of that. And for that reason, I'm going to take Frank Camacho to win. I'm going to take him to win via knockout. Now, in the next quick fire fight in the women's division, we've got Bea Malecki versus Duda Santana. John, who have you got?
For me, this one, I'm going to keep this very short and sweet, because I've seen very little of either fighter, so it really is a bit of a coin toss. I think Duda Santana has got the slightly more experience. Obviously, Bea Malecki was in the Ultimate Fighter, part of the I think it was the last cast of season 28. But yeah, I don't really know enough about either fighter. I haven't seen enough footage to really break down how it's going to go. The betting lines are pretty even. But I'm going to go with Duda Santana to win this fight. I think she's got the slightly more experience. And from what I've seen of her, she looks pretty powerful. She's got the ability to go to the decision. And it really is a bit of a loose pick, because I haven't seen enough of these two women to really make a good judgment call. But on that toss of the coin, it's landed on Santana, so I'm going with Duda Santana to win this fight.
Yeah, it's a bit of a strange fight, to be honest with you. Bea Malecki is 1-0. She's down 2-0 at some places, but I believe that second fight was an amateur fight, so professionally she's 1-0. She was in the last season of Tough. I'm telling you, the only reason why she's on this card is because she's from Stockholm, and
yep.
she's been on Tough. But it's weird how Duda Santana's made her way onto the card, because she's had no prior fights in any affiliated UFC platform, like the Ultimate Fighter, like Dana White's Contender Series, even the Brazilian version of the Contender Series as well. So it's a bit strange how they found her, but man, Duda Santana is fucking huge, and Bea Malecki's not small either for the division. Now, the difference between them, Bea Malecki is definitely more of the technical fighter, crisp, accurate strikes, whereas Duda Santana is more of a powerhouse. She'll come forward, winging bombs, aggressive volume coming forward, but she has got a lot of holes defensively, and we have seen her rocked in previous fights. Anna Costa, I think it was, rocked her a couple of times. So there is that option for Bea Malecki to really get a defensive game going, and to try and put it on Santana and rock her. But the thing is, I think that when it comes down to cardio, I think Bea Malecki has got the slightly worse tank. She was fading a little bit in that fight, in a pro debut fight, but she was taken down as well, so that's an option for Duda Santana, whether she opts to take her down. It's a weird fight. For the sake of the podcast, I am going to also take Duda Santana to win. I think she can go 3 rounds a little bit easier than what Bea Malecki can. I just think that forward aggressive volume is going to be something that Bea Malecki's maybe not used to and hasn't seen before. I think it could cause her problems. And like I say, I'm going to Duda Santana to win. I'm going to take it to win via decision. Now, in the next quickfire fight, we've got Joel Alvarez versus the newcomer Danilo Belluardo. Very Italian. John, who have you got?
Yeah, very Italian, with a fantastic nickname of the Caterpillar as well.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. I think pretty much any mixed martial arts fan in the world will agree that Joel Alvarez had one of the one of the most underwhelming UFC debuts of all time ever when he fought Damir Ismagulov back in February. He literally barely threw a strike. He kind of looked like he didn't even want to be there. I think the bright lights of the UFC really got to him. Obviously, we spoke before about how his biggest danger is chokes. He's got a variety of triangle chokes, darce, guillotine. That does seem to be his submission game. Seems to be his strength. So yeah, it's either he either chokes you out or he chokes when he gets under the bright lights. It's one or the other, and he's going up against the guy Beloardo, who I do like the look of. I mean, he's a guy who's got a variety of finishes. He won fight before last, Bravo choke. He's won via strikes, punches, arm triangles. He can win if the fight goes to decision as well. We've seen him fight against tough guys as well. Stefano Paterno. Followers of Cage Warriors will know all about him. AJ McKee, fans of Bellator will know all about him. So he's come up against some decent opposition before, and yeah, I, from what I've seen of him and the tape, I do like the look of him. He looks pretty well rounded, quite dangerous in multiple positions. So and after Joel Alvarez's UFC debut, I didn't really see anything there that stood out particularly. So I'm going with Beluardo, aka Caterpillar, to win this fight.
Yeah, I agree, man. There's absolutely no way that I can pick Joel Alvarez to win this fight after what we saw that first time. We say it time and time again that it's such a benefit for a fighter to take a short notice debut fight in the UFC because they're almost guaranteed a contract, whether they win or lose, just as a thank you from the UFC, or at least just one more fight just to see how they're going to perform. Now, any fighter that ever doubts that statement, go and watch Joel Alvarez's first fight in the UFC, because rumour has it that this guy got a 6-fight contract after that fight with Damir Ismagulov, which is fucking incredible.
That's crazy.
He can either talk or he's got the best manager on the planet. But as far as this fight goes, yeah, I can't pick Joel Alvarez to win because I saw fuck all of him in his debut. And from Beluardo's point of view, he has lost 3 fights. He's 12-3. All 3 have come via knockout. Joel Alvarez has only finished 1 fighter by knockout. The rest of them are submissions. But Beluardo actually looks quite exciting, He's aggressive. He comes forward. He's got power. He's got takedowns. He's got fucking vicious ground and pound. And this is where I think that this fight is actually going to be interesting because he thrives in top control. He thrives on top grappling. He thrives in his ground and pound. And Joel Alvarez will want to be on his back, throwing up triangles and arm bars from his back. I think it's going to be a really interesting fight. But like I say, I can't pick Joel Alvarez because of what I saw from his debut in the UFC, which was utterly disappointing. I actually think Beluardo looks very exciting and he does come to throw down. I think that's going to pay dividends for him in this fight. I think he's going to take the win. I think he's going to win via knockout. Now, in the last quick fire fight, and this is last because it's a short notice fight that's been put together after Bartosz Fabinski pulled out. So as always, there's always fucking one on every card that we don't know where it's going to line up in the card order, so I just drop it at the bottom. But we've got Rostem Akman versus Sergey Khandozko. John, who have you got?
Yeah, again, another fight that I haven't really seen a great deal of these guys. Khandozko, we've obviously seen a bit more of him. I've seen bits of him on ACB, which we know are a good promotion. Obviously, of course, no longer known as ACB. But yeah, if you look back, if you go back to ACB 38 as well in 2016 against Maurizio Mercado, and he won that fight in 5 seconds, the first round via head kick, and he's dangerous, man. He's got power. He throws crazy stuff. I mean, he's won by spinning back fist. Obviously, like I said, that head kick in 5 seconds, but he can grind it out and get the decisions as well. He's got a win via rear naked choke, so he can win this fight in multiple ways. Rostem Akman, I've seen very little of this guy. I mean, he's again coming from the regional scene. But if you look at his record again, he's got a lot of his wins have come by strike. He has got a heel hook thrown in there as well for good measure. But yeah, he looks predominantly a striker, and he tries to get the fight done on the feet, or if it goes to the ground, he tries to land that heavy ground and pound. But yeah. I think that Sergei Kandosko is the better fighter. He's far more experienced with 31 fights under his belt. Akman's only got 6 fights, and yeah, I think Kandosko has come up against more dangerous guys in his career, got more tools and more ways that he can win the fight. So I'm going with Kandosko to win this fight, and I think he'll win by a stoppage.
Yeah, I agree. I think Cardozo is going to win as well, and this is actually low key my prediction for fight of the night. I think it's going to be a really, really good fight. I really like Cardozo, and I was actually going to pick him against Fabinski as well. And anybody that knows me knows how much I love Bartosz Fabinski, but Cardozo is a guy that predominantly started his career as a wrestler, and then he worked on his striking that much. He looks more of a striker than a wrestler, but he still goes back to his roots, and he mixes in his game so well. He's got good scrambles when he does get taken down, good reversals. He does have good top control as well, and like I say, he's got some nice forward pressure, some nice striking, nice movement. I really like the guy, and I think he's going to stack up quite a few wins in the UFC. But on the opposite side of the cage to him is Rostam Akman. Now, yes, Akman looks like he's a little bit inexperienced, but actually he's got a 13-2 amateur career. And what I really like about that amateur career is the fact that he's gone down the IMAF route, the IMMAF route, International Mixed Martial Arts Federation. So I'm working quite a bit with the UK Mixed Martial Arts Federation with Heavy Duty right now, and Windy Miller and the guys over there. So I understand what they're trying to do from an amateur perspective in mixed martial arts, and actually what they are trying to do is get these fighters into European and world tournaments, trying to get them so much experience so that when they go into their pro career, they're ready. The quality of the fighting is going to be much better because they've got a greater background. It's not exactly like a fighter's coming in from a 1-0, a 2-0 record and they're looking to turn professional. I know I'm digressing a little bit here, but I just wanted to explain how important that amateur background is to Rostam Akman. It's one of the most legitimate amateur backgrounds that you could possibly have. So the dude is experienced in himself, like I say, inside a cage. He's, I know he's 6-0 as a professional, but he's got many more fights under his belt, and he's a madman. Like, he'll come forward, he'll wing bombs, he mixes in takedowns. I do tend to think that he throws in the takedowns as a little bit of a curveball every now and again, and seems to complete them. And then when they stand back up, now their opponent's got to worry about a takedown as well as these crazy strikes coming at them. But yeah, for the sake of this pick, I think this fight is going to be a really good fight. I think it's going to be a really close fight. For the fact that Rostam Akman looks so fucking tough to me, I am going to pick Sergey Kandosko to win, but I'm not going to take him to win by finish, like I say, because Akman does look really tough and he's got a decent background himself. So I'm going to Sergey Kandosko to win, and I'm going to take him to win by decision. And that's it for this week's podcast, guys. So, John, before we hit the Newsome MMA mentions, what do you need to mention, man?
Just as always, check out everything that we're putting out on Newsome MMA, on the website, on the YouTube channel. I had a great interview with Joe Giannetti that's just gone up on the YouTube channel over the weekend, talking about his upcoming fight on Cage Titans next month. We're dropping an interview with Zach Cummings in the coming days as well, so keep an eye out for that. And there's always great content going out either on the website or the YouTube channel, so make sure you check that out. And as always, hit me up on Twitter at MMA and me. Always happy to talk to you guys about anything mixed martial arts related. So hit me up at MMA and me, and we can talk.
Absolutely, and just be a little patient just this week for the interviews as well. We have got a bit of a backlog with the stuff going on Newsome MMA. That's just because I've been really busy. I was in Gdansk for KSW with Scott Askham last week. I'm obviously in Stockholm, Sweden this week for Alex Rakic. So once Stockholm's out the way, I don't think there's any more planned trips for at least a few months anyway. So yeah, please be patient, but we'll get everything back in order shortly. Now for the Newsome MMA mentions. First of all, I want to mention the Newsome MMA website. Don't forget to visit the website at newsomemma.co.uk, where you'll find my MMA betting section, which will provide written betting advice for 3 of the fights that were in the quickfire round. You'll also find the locally famous tape index feature, prediction videos, fighter interviews, and the content collaboration with Heavy Duty Fight Management too. You can even request colour commentary and media coverage from Newsome MMA as well. The next mention is the long-term sponsor of Newsome MMA, CBD Life UK. CBD is an amazing product and something that I use myself. Thousands of professional athletes also use CBD too, and at CBD Life UK they've got a wide variety of products to suit the needs of any customer. You can go to cbdlifeuk.com and use promo code Newsome MMA to also get 15% off your order. And that's it for us, guys. Enjoy the fights on Saturday night, and we'll see you next week.